Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Hey, Carl. How are you?
You know, I'm in Stockholm. I was speaking at a conference over here.
Cool.
And I have a problem with the travel board who gave me some tips about Sweden.
Oh, yeah?
Not one person has said the words bork, bork, bort.
In public.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe that's
That's
it.
what you say in private to your loved ones.
Yeah, but here I am, greeting everybody for the first time. Hey, bort, bort, bort. And they look at me like,
What is your problem?
Your visa was immediately denied.
exactly. So we have 11 stories. We
That's
may
great.
not go into depth into all of them, but we'll
we can't do them
certainly
all
mention
justice.
them. We'll mention them and we'll link them. Okay.
Can we link them all?
Yeah, we'll link them all. So in order that we discovered them and put them in our notes, let's start with Inside Killnet.
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 Killnet. So this is from Dark Reading. And this, it's interesting to see what's going on with Russia and pro-Russian hacking groups. So Killnet is a pro-Russian hacktivist group.
Okay.
And apparently they do not like our involvement in anything that's going on in world geopolitics. So the hacktivist group Killnet launched a distributed denial of service, or DDoS, attack against 14 major U.S. hospitals.
Oh, wow.
And is continually trying to shut those down. Organizations like Cedars-Sinai, Duke Health, Michigan Medicine, etc. So a lot of really big organizations that they're trying to shut down.
Wow. Hospitals, though, that's pretty horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a little cold.
Yeah.
Man.
Let's talk about this for a second. So you've got this group that wants to help the Russians in their war effort, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing is they basically dropped a load of ants where they knew we were going to have our picnic. Because most of these hospitals have been hit by denial of service before.
That's a New Hampshireism, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. So I'm not sure I'm not trying to tell them that they should pick better targets, because I don't want them to pick better targets. But it actually is kind of it's kind of like the Russians hitting civilian infrastructure. It's a sign of impotence. They really don't have anything better to hit. So I'm going to go after their hospitals in America where there's no war and they have full resources to deal with it, and it's an annoyance. I don't think they're impacting these organizations to a point where they're not functioning. They're just making things hard. So they're not able to. This is a sign of weakness, not a sign of strength. If they were strong, they would be denying radar systems and taking out things that are logistical systems that actually affect the war effort, and they're not.
Yeah, and according to most of the hospitals, they were like, Yeah, like we've seen attacks like this before. That their quote unquote distributed denial of service isn't really as hot as they think it is.
Yeah. So they've got to upgrade their level of CDN. They've got to upgrade their content delivery network to supply. Oh my God. And it'll cost some money maybe, but they probably already do because they've been targets before. So literally this is an annoyance, and it's a sign of weakness, not a sign of strength.
Right. And according to the news article, they're really looking for publicity, right? Not actually trying to attack something.
All right. Well, hospitals beware. And hey, from the No, I Will Not Fix Your Printer department, let's talk about Lexmark. Lexmark warns of remote control execution bug affecting 100 printer models, and a proof of concept was released.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk a lot about the world of IoT in cybersecurity. Like, what about this brand new thermostat or this brand new device that monitors the, humidity in the air and tells me if the server room's too humid or whatever.
Or tracks my cows in the pasture.
Yeah, exactly. But, the IoT device that we've all had since we were kids is the printer, right? It's been around and plugged into the network forever, and nobody ever patches it.
Yeah.
And most of the time, nobody ever puts a password on it. I'd like to say it's shocking that every pen test and red team engagement we've done, we have found an open printer. Every single one.
Wasn't one of our recent ones we got to domain administrator through a printer?
Yes. Yeah. So there are some interesting things you can pull out of a printer.
Now, we were inside the network already.
Oh,
this
of course.
wasn't from the internet. We weren't like in the parking lot.
Right. But your printer, a lot of people don't think of the things that the printer has access to. Like, we've been on printers that have access to Office 365 because they need to send emails every time that they scan something. It can send an email to you with this scan. Well, it needs an email account. Well, we can pull usernames and passwords for that account and then start querying Azure Active Directory and start pulling down user information. Lots of printers have Wi-Fi credentials on them. Yeah. So you can pull down Wi-Fi information, and all of these printers usually have a Squash FS or some sort of Linux operating system where we can just put implants on them. So printers don't run antivirus, right? It's a great place for us to put a base of tools is on a printer and allow that thing to then beacon out to us over the internet. So you think we're out of the network and we're not.
Did I ever tell you the story about I was doing a solo gig with my guitar at a place that's a beloved place locally where I live. And, no. And, so I needed to print out, some lyrics, right? Because, I had gone through my list and I realized, I didn't have these lyrics and I don't remember them. So I asked the owner, hey, if I email you, these lyrics or a link, can you print them out? She says, why don't you just connect to my printer? And I said, with what? She goes, well, your phone. And I had never done that before. I had never printed from my phone before, so I was skeptical.
Yeah.
But I tried it. And she basically said, yeah, you have an iPhone, right? Yeah, just tell to find local printers and connect to mine and print.
She's a wizard.
And I was like, really? So yeah, it worked. And I did, but I was horrified that I could do that. So you're saying that anybody sitting at this bar who has a phone can say, I want to print this on your printer and waste all your paper. But that was the least of my worries, apparently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anybody sitting there with a laptop, pretending they're, writing their next novel could break into that printer and maybe run code and
let's be realistic.
Do what they want.
The odds that the printer had a vulnerability is only 99.9%. So there's a chance.
And then it's fine.
It's fully secure. Otherwise.
Yeah.
And I know most bars' IT staff are really on top of patching printers and making sure that they're
making sure you have vodka and patching. Those are the two things,
Patch the Lexmark.
Yeah. So needless to say, this story distills down to if you have a Lexmark printer and it's running firmware. Well, listen, I'm going to say this. If you have a Lexmark printer and you can't tell me what the version of firmware is, then you need to go update it. That's what you need to do. And you need to update it to the latest firmware. I won't give you numbers. Just go update your printer. Make sure that you can't. Nobody's going to use your printer to do nefarious things.
So this sound for our more sophisticated listeners who are saying, yeah, of course, that's, table stakes. If you don't know where all your printers are and have an inventory, then you probably have other things like printers that you're not paying attention to, and some of them need to be patched. So if you're sitting there smug saying, I'm better than that, it's a time to do a gut check and make sure you've got an inventory of everything that's running code and make sure it's all up to date because you're forgetting something.
At the very least, don't put your printers on the guest Wi-Fi,
right?
On the passwordless Wi-Fi. Don't do that. You don't want people connecting to your, to your printer and doing anything.
Oh, absolutely. No. It can be used to run code. It can be used to use malicious things. Or you're right. You could just spit paper out and print pictures of
paper and ink are expensive, man.
Yeah,
ink is expensive.
What is this? Somebody printed out War and Peace on my printer. Must have been that Franklin guy. All right, so let's move on. WordPress, because WordPress is the pinnacle of security.
We haven't talked about WordPress in a little while. Did we just get WordPress fatigue?
I know, right? I think we missed it on one show.
Yeah.
Which makes it sound terrible. And honestly, one of the reasons WordPress is such a target is it's used by so many companies.
And it has such a big ecosystem. And every element of that ecosystem that gets vulnerable, we blame it on WordPress.
Right. And honestly, a WordPress system with no plugins is super secure. You put the right passwords on there. You make sure it's patched. There aren't easy ways to break into WordPress.
And so boring to use.
That's true. Yeah.
So this particular one is Learning Press plugin.
Okay.
The WordPress online course plugin LearnPress was vulnerable to multiple critical severity flaws, including pre-authentication SQL injection and local file inclusion.
Wait a minute. So pre-authentication means before you put in your username and password, we can get into your SQL database and drop all your tables.
Little Bobby tables.
Little Bobby tables. Drop them. So yeah, and what's interesting about SQL injection, we've talked about this so many times. It's on the top list of the OWASP worst things to do is to have SQL injection, and it's been on that list since the list came out.
Yeah.
So, SQL injection is, honestly, one of the biggest suggestions would be, most of the time using parameterized queries, making sure you're not concatenating strings and never trusting any input from the user.
That's advice to the programmer, kids, not to you. So
for you kids, patch your WordPress site.
You shouldn't have put them out of their misery, Carl. We should have made them Google.
That's true.
Google, ChatGPT. Tell me about it.
We have a story about Googling that's going to
make you stop.
Scary.
So, and local file inclusion is another exploit on this particular version of plugin. LFIs are interesting in that it gives me the ability to request data off of the web server hard drive. So SQL injection gives me control over the SQL server, which might be a different server than the web server. But LFIs allow me to read data off of the local hard drive. So you may say, I'm an administrator and I'm going to put the SQL username and password in this text file on my web server. Who cares? Right? Like the config file that the website needs to access the database. And hackers then can pull that file, find usernames and passwords and that sort of stuff. So
wow.
Need to go out, need to patch.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So from PC Magazine, hackers prove the easiest way to make a crypto fortune is by stealing it.
I think it's the only way nowadays.
I feel like this is become a common sense thing, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like saying, if you want to search the internet, use Google. Like, if you want to make a fortune in crypto, just take it from other people. I
mean, we're not giving investment advice on this podcast. Let's make that perfectly clear. But, crypto... I've invested in crypto, but not like anything I wasn't willing to lose. It's an interesting space. Yeah. It's a place for a lot of the, monetary expansion to go. It's been an interesting experiment, but I always known there are some exchanges that if they go down, it's over. The confidence is gone. And one of them was the one that went down recently. The Sam Bankman-Fried guy. His exchange was one of the big ones. If Coinbase were to go away, that would probably be the end of it. I don't know that it would survive, Coinbase. They're pretty solid operations from what I know. They are not a sponsor. They are not paying us. I just happen to use them. But there's so many thefts going on. It's the exchanges and the protocols that are the weakness. The coins aren't being co-opted in most cases, at least not the big coins like Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Yeah. Crypto is, I could smell trouble from the very beginning with crypto. And some people have, decided to get in on it and they made money because that's how Ponzi schemes work, right?
Yeah.
You get in early and you get out early and you're done. But, somebody's got to lose that money.
The big question is whether they break this record next year. The 3.8 billion was stolen last year. Does this year beat that, or does it go? Do we learn our lessons, or do we let people? Some of the prosecutions that have come from this Sam Bankman thing will probably solidify the industry a little bit, and maybe it'll stabilize at a certain level, at a reasonable level. But it's all speculation. Speculation always ends up overinflated.
Right. And in this particular case, I mean, the biggest operators of stolen cryptocurrencies right now is the Lazarus Group. They're a North Korean hacking group.
Yeah, it's basically North Korea trying to fund their government.
Well, speaking of governments that are trying to use crypto, Russia, who before the invasion was, we don't like cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency outlawed in Russia. And then after, they lost their SWIFT access and access to real funds, they said, we love cryptocurrency. Everybody going to buy from us with crypto.
They've tried a lot of things.
It's an interesting play. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if the world's central financial organizations have said, no, you can't have any more money, DeFi is probably the way to go, and start adopting cryptocurrency. I think the problem there is they become a holder of a lot of cryptocurrency and it starts to tank. Well, now they're in trouble. They don't really have any.
Well, they also tried something else. We can venture into this for a second. I only have one source on this, but it's a pretty good source.
Tulips?
No, they did a deal with China for oil where they sold about $10 billion worth of oil to China, but they took yuan, the Chinese currency, instead of dollars to thumb their noses at the U.S. and the Western system. And then when they wanted to use the yuan with China's like, no thanks.
Ooh.
And so they got
we have enough, thanks.
We have enough, thanks. No, you keep it. And so it's not fungible. So it's like if I took like Carl tokens and I, said, we're going to get away from this dollar thing. I'm going to take Carl tokens and then I've got 1,000. And then Carl's like, you know what? Banks closed this month. I'm not open for business.
You can tell Carl dollars because they have purple chickens on them.
Trademark purple chicken.
So we're actually linking to a YouTube video. Can Russia use cryptocurrency to dodge sanctions? And I started watching it. I got about halfway through, and it's pretty interesting stuff. They're trying to do it because they don't have access to the world's money any other way. Yeah. All right. Enough about that. Remember I was telling you about Google?
Yeah.
Well, until further notice, says Ars Technica, think twice before using Google to download software. Over the past month, Google has been outgunned by malvertisers.
Yeah.
That's a fun one, huh? Yeah. Malvertisers with new tricks.
I'm going to put that on my resume. I'm a malvertiser.
Malvert.
Sounds like something to get you on a list you can't go near a school anymore.
This sounds like one of those things that they're trying to make us afraid of, but we really can't do anything about.
Honestly, you can.
Yeah.
So I've always been, I'm paranoid. I think that's pretty well established.
What is the threat anyway? An ad that's got malware in it?
Well, the threat is you want to download something like WinRAR, which is a tool that a lot of us have used instead of PKZip and instead of zip tools. If you go to rar.com, that's not it. That's not the people who do it. That's somebody who's having you download something that's a lookalike. And I don't know if it's winrar.com or whatever. So you have to do some research to figure it out, whether you're downloading it from the right place, whether you're going to the right place. And it's best to go there to find out what the URL is and go there yourself instead of be led there by someone who says, oh, I know the way.
I see. So you go to Google and you say WinRAR. And you get these ads that are actually to malware sites.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or what's even worse is you get a site that did its own SEO promotion in the long game, and they're offering an adulterated version of the software. So
like a free version you don't have to pay for or something.
Like WinRAR is an example where you don't pay for it anyways, but you go to the URL, the real URL for WinRAR. I have to look it up right now, but it has nothing to do with the name. And if you go to winrar.com, it's not the right site. So I don't know whether it's malicious or whether it's just a helper site, but it's not the official site. And so you have to do some, I relate it to this. If you were in a new land, if you landed on a new continent, would you just start eating things? Just to try them? No.
I don't know how hungry am I.
You would try to figure it out, right?
Do you know who you're talking to, Patrick?
Software should be at least that interesting for you. I mean, there's actually protocols for how you discover whether something's poisonous. You take it and you rub it on your skin to see whether it causes a rash, and then you take a little bit of it and you put it in your mouth and you spit it out and you wait 10 minutes. There's protocols for figuring out whether something is edible or not. You have to develop a protocol for figuring out whether you should be installing software in your environment, and it's painful.
Yeah, download it and rub it on your skin.
That's
and
right.
wait
Patrick
10
has a
minutes.
link to the protocol, and it's at patricksprotocol.com.
I go to Duane's house and I download it there.
Yeah,
And,
thank you. Very good. And if it is malicious, I get a new tool to use.
Well,
And if
I
it
mean-
isn't, he gets a new tool. So it's good.
You could always fire up a new VM, like and get a,
Duane's house is like Venus. Any malware is outgunned as soon as it gets on the network.
all right. So, be careful out there. Anything that doesn't have
Look for the union label. Is that what you're trying to say?
anything that doesn't smell like the original, or sometimes you'll go to these websites and there'll be all these links that say download, and then you got to look really closely at what you're downloading.
And it's an ad.
It's not what you went there for.
Right. Yeah. There's an install button that's an ad.
Yeah. And
It's
after
those kinds of things.
I see those, I just go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's like if you search for Internet Explorer download, which is a web browser on Microsoft.
Yeah.
One of the first links that comes up is internet-explorer-9-vista.sonic software.
That has to be safe.
Like that's.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking that's Internet Explorer.
Well,
Yeah.
it's being in a rush that gets you in trouble here. When you're going to install software, you need to do it competently and cautiously, and you can't be like, oh, I need this. Let me go down in a rush. That's like, just grabbing leaves off of random trees and eating them.
Right.
You end up dead in a,
It's funny. We, at my house, we use a firewall as my firewall. And it can do ad and content blocking. One of the guys on my team, actually my twin brother, also uses a firewall. And he said people in the house started coming and going, hey, when I'm doing searches on the internet, I can't get to certain sites anymore. It's weird. I can't, I do a search, I click on the site and it just doesn't come up anymore. And, my brother looked at it and he's like, yeah, you know why that is? That's because those were all ad sites that you were going to. And now they're finally getting blocked. But it was common practice, just like it is pretty much everywhere. You do a search for Google and you click on the first link or the second link or whatnot, right?
Yeah, because now it just says ad. It doesn't say advertisement. It doesn't say sponsor. It just says
tiny
AD
little words
in a tiny area because,
So that's another interesting thing to do as well. If you want to block some of these things is, put in a firewall that does some form of content blocking, or put in a pie hole. Put it in your pie hole and block it that way. So.
The only nit I have about, pie holes and protecting people across the board from this stuff is that when there's something that gets around it, they have no defenses. It's kind of like living in a bubble that it kills their immune system. They need to learn how to recognize this stuff and what it is. I just don't know how to fix it because, as you say, even competent users will click on the wrong thing.
Oh, yeah.
Even I'm sure I click on the wrong thing.
Oh, I know
sometimes.
I have. Yep.
So,
I think having a virtual machine, a VM in the cloud, which is like a virtual Windows machine that you can log into, download it there, run it, and, if you don't get all of the, your PC has been infected with malware, click here to fix it.
that's a great way to do it, but it's so much more work than most people are willing to do.
That's true.
Yeah.
I wish that that was a solution that, most people would do, but I think the problem is we have to protect them. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're not, in the category, that is a great suggestion.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's take a quick break and we'll come back. And I got a question about Microsoft and Google that you guys might want to speculate about. But after the break, we'll see you in a minute. And we're back. You're listening to Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin, the dumb guy, and that's Patrick and Duane, the smart guys. And we're talking about so much, but I said that I would bring this up. Microsoft and Google started a real war this week, just a few days ago. And they're both using AI in their search engines. And we sort of alluded to this before, but I don't know if you were paying attention, but Bing launched their new service that uses the ChatGPT in the back end. And Google has another one called Bard, which is their thing. And Google lost stock value because somebody posted that they got Bard to give some irrelevant thing about the James Webb Telescope was the first telescope to see outside our solar system. That's what Bard told it, or the Google thing told it. And of course that's wrong. So, based on that, the Google stock went down to like a valuable, price. I bought some.
Yeah.
I bought some Google stock. I mean, this is the time to buy when people freak out about news that's based on BS. Well, it's not BS, but it's correctable. It's nothing that.
Have you ever heard the story of Mr. Market?
No.
It's a little bit of a segue, but when somebody who both Duane and I worked with, a good friend of ours and mentor, used to work at the American Stock Exchange, and he said the best way to understand the market is to the parable of Mr. Market. So imagine you're in business with a person who owns part of the company, and every day, based on their mood, they either want to buy your stock or sell theirs.
Yeah.
So, I got caught at every traffic light this morning. I'm in a bad mood. I'm going to sell my stock.
Yep.
And it was purely based on their mood and based on their perceptions. That's the market. So you're exactly right. Tomorrow it'll be something else. It'll be someone else.
Yeah. But that's a great time to buy.
Yeah.
But it also shows the craziness of how people will go and attach to things in technology, and they'll do things like, sign up for TikTok and use, technologies that are unproven and, strip leaves off random trees and shove them in their mouths. Oh, no, wait, they don't do that. I don't know why. So, we need to step back and try not to be part of that crowd. And that's an example. You bought the dip of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I was going with
and that's when you buy. That's not when you sell your Google stock. That's when you buy more.
You buy more, right?
Yeah, because the fundamentals of the company, fundamentals haven't changed. It's just that, they had this blip and the market freaked out and they reacted.
And it's an artificial one. I did the same thing with Bank of America. Bank of America got sued many years ago, and their stock price took a big, big hit. And I bought it, and less than a year later, I more than doubled what I bought.
Yeah, it's great. That's what you should. All right, Truth Finder. Who wants it?
I'll take it. So I have a lot of knowledge of these sites because they're used in OSINT, open source intelligence. Basically, when you have a target, you want to figure out all you can from them. And these are the kinds of sites like the White Pages and Instant Checkmate, where you can go in, get a subscription, and look up the people in their database. And they're using public records. You can find most of this information without using these sites.
So it's like a background check service.
It's an aggregator, background checker. Yeah. Yep. I know Instant Checkmate and Truth Finder, I think they are used for background checks as well. And so this is 20 million of their customers that their database has basically been breached. They leaked a backup database containing the info for millions of their customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and according to the breach, this is if you had an account, let's say on, Instant Checkmate or Truth Finder or whatever. I think it's 11 million accounts, almost 12 million accounts out of Instant Checkmate, and 8.2 million out of Truth Finder were grabbed.
Yeah.
And let's say, I don't know, you're either dating and you're looking people up, or, we're doing OSINT.
Or you're doing background checks on your employees.
OSINT, what's OSINT?
Open source intelligence.
Open source intelligence.
Oh, okay.
We say that like everybody knows what OSINT is.
All right. Yeah.
I defined it a minute ago, so I guess I didn't do a good job.
Back in the 90s, it was called being creepy, but now it's open source intelligence, where you're like, what's the kids' names? Where do they live? Where do they go to school? Who's your wife? What's her name? Where does she go to work? What's her email address? What's her phone number? That's open source intelligence now.
All right. So here is some.
It's criminal advice.
Okay, listen up, criminals. If you're gonna try to fool me into talking to you on Facebook by imitating one of my friends, why don't you do a little OSINT and figure out a little bit more about them so you can have a decent conversation with me and convince me to send you $100 because you're stranded in Barcelona.
Remember the show, Mr. Robot? In like the first season, he went after a guy and he just looked at his Facebook and he looked at a couple of things and he found the guy's pet names and things like that. And he used that to build a dictionary of passwords, and he broke the guy's accounts using those passwords.
Yeah. OSINT.
Wow.
That's
fantastic.
OSINT.
Yep.
Got it.
So in this particular case, what was stolen, because this might be important. You want to know, like, hey, is my whole list of people that I've been doing background checks out on the internet? And they said we've learned recently that the list including name, email, telephone number, and in some cases, as well as encrypted passwords and expired and inactive password reset tokens of Truth Finder subscribers was being discussed and made available on an internet
Cat's
forum.
name.
Yep.
So wait a minute. Does this also
Dog's
mean
name.
that you can go find out who they've been researching?
So I don't. At least in Truth Finder, it doesn't look like you can. I don't see anything that says what leaked out of Instant Checkmate. But that would be interesting, right? If I could go to somebody and be like, okay, who are the people that they're constantly looking up?
Well, because you'd want to know if you were being
tracked. Right. Yeah,
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this was, I want to say this was after Believing Computer and Troy Hunt of Have I Been Pwned contacted People Connect about the data leak. This is what they found.
From what I understand, Have I Been Pwned has an API service that you can subscribe to.
Yeah.
So that anytime somebody creates an account on your website, you can look it up on Have I Been Pwned and say, hey, you should change your password. Yeah.
So Troy still operates that himself, doesn't he?
I think he does.
Yeah. That's been a great resource, and he was very smart to build that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and now he's, thank God he's making some money off of it because he wasn't.
Yeah, I know.
For
a while, he was putting everything into it, and he was spending hours and hours per week just keeping it going.
Well, good for him. I hope it becomes profitable for him because it's a valuable service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So, who wants to talk about this ransomware attack on VM ESXi servers?
Yeah. So, I know we're running short on time, and I know we won't get to a lot of the articles we have, but if you take away one article from this week, this is probably the one. So there's a massive right now, ESXi, ransomware attack going on the internet. I mean, to the point where CISA's actually put out, recommendations.
Right. You're spewing acronyms, Duane. You have to define them. What is ESXi?
CISA stands for something I never remember. Computer Information Systems. No, that's not it. Hold on.
Security Administration.
Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Wow. Now I know why it's CISA and not.
All right. But what's ESXi?
ESXi is VMware. So if you want, Carl's been talking about virtual machines, right? You want to spin up a virtual machine. It's like a little software version of Windows that you can run. And if it gets infected, whatever, you shut it off and turn it back on. And it's fresh, new, like you never installed things. It's great for if you're doing home labs, right? So if you're a developer or even a network engineer and you want to test out code, you want to have a database and a web server, you want to learn hacking.
You want to download WinRAR.
Yeah, you want to download WinRAR. So most of us do have, virtualized infrastructure in our environment where we have a bunch of VMs, virtual machines, that are up and running and doing things. Whether it's for learning or whether it's for development or whatnot. There are multiple what they call hypervisors. And hypervisor is when you're running a virtual machine, it needs to run on something, right? So I may have 10 virtual Windows computers running on one physical computer, but that physical computer is running an operating system, and that operating system has a hypervisor. So it could be Windows with Hyper-V, that's a hypervisor. It could be you're using VirtualBox, which is another hypervisor. Or it could be that you're running ESXi. ESXi is a bare metal hypervisor. So what that means is you would install it literally on the box as the operating system.
Okay, wait a minute. No. Wait. As the operating system, so instead of Windows, so you boot up to it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you download it from VMware, from EMC/Dell. I believe it's still EMC/Dell. You download, VMware ESX from them. You put it on a USB, you plug it into some computer, you boot to it, install it as an operating system, and it's a tiny little Linux kernel that gets installed. And the only way you interact with it typically is through a web browser. So you open up a web browser, you hit the web interface, you log in, and you can create VMs, carve off more storage.
I'm getting this. I'm getting this, Duane, that because this is at such a fundamental level, if it gets compromised,
yes,
everything gets compromised.
Exactly. Yeah, which
like
is
the foundation.
Awesome. Right. Yeah.
Said no one other than Duane ever.
It is actually really cool. So what's really neat is if you do compromise this box, that means you get access not only to this box, but you can get access to every VM that's running on the box because you're at such a low level. You're at the hypervisor level. So coming back to this particular exploit, this right now is running around like wildfire on the internet. There are tons of, for some reason, ESXi boxes connected to the internet, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. They should be behind firewalls. You should have to VPN in to use them. I don't know anybody who just wants to hit a website on an ESXi box over the internet and control a box. Sounds scary to me. But these issues that they're discussing in this article that we'll link to were patched over a year ago.
Wow.
So if you've been listening to our podcast here, we actually talked about these patches probably a year ago and said, hey, you should go out and patch your ESX boxes.
But now it's all in the wild and the script kiddies have access to it.
Right.
So that's an interesting. Let's talk about that for a second. So a vulnerability comes out and it's theoretical. Mm-hmm. And then a patch comes out because...
And then you hear about it here.
And then you hear about it here, right?
Okay.
Hopefully in that order.
Yeah.
And if Duane says it's awesome, you better pay attention.
And you run and patch.
And then for the more complicated things, the hacking world starts developing ways to do it. And the nation states get ways to exploit it very quickly.
Yeah.
And then some of the criminal syndicates figure out how to hack it. And that leaks out onto the dark web after a few months. And then a script kiddie gets a hold of it and figures out how to weaponize it. And then it starts getting targeted against anything that's still unpatched on the internet. And that's the life cycle. And we are trying to get you to only be vulnerable to the nation states because we're probably not going to get ahead of them. Some of them probably knew about it before it was published.
Yeah.
You got to patch that. There's no other way to say it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an interesting lesson in that this was patched a year ago. It was not as advertised much because it was like hey, a researcher found this issue.
And it's ransomware, right? Like it will.
Well, they're using it for ransomware. It's an exploit, and they've taken like an RCE. Or whatever.
They can do anything.
Yep.
Right.
It's at such a low level.
Ransomware just happens to be the thing that they've chosen to do because it's profitable.
Yeah.
Because we allow people to pay the ransom.
Oh, man. Guys, I'm getting a little tired. I'm going to go take a little Q nap, okay?
Please don't.
What the hell is QNAP and why is it in the news?
So QNAP is network attached storage. Think tiny little box, typically that you can stuff hard drives into. You don't install an operating system or whatnot. You turn it on, and now you have storage attached to your network. So you can, and there's all sorts of things you can do with these. Actually, we base a lot of our infrastructure on Synology because we like that. But QNAP's very similar to Synology. It's a device,
except it's not in the news as much.
Okay.
Wow. Now people are going to target Synology. Nice. So, you plug this box in. Usually you access it over a web interface. You can have shares on there. You can have it back up your computers over your local computers on the network.
Right.
You can run services on there like Docker. So there's all sorts of things you can do with a network attached storage device more than just, hey, it's hard drive sitting on the network.
Right. Okay.
And in that, people are constantly trying to find ways to break into them because that's where all the storage is. So it might be where all the good things are you're keeping. It's much cheaper to take something like a QNAP and put it at a remote branch office. So if we're a large organization, we have 100 different offices. I don't want to put a server closet in each of those offices. So putting a QNAP at each of the offices for local backups, that's actually a much cheaper way to do it. And we've seen that quite a bit. It
reminds me of a famous quote. Did you ever hear of Willie Sutton?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Willie Sutton was a famous bank robber, and they asked him, why do you rob banks? And he says, because that's where the money is.
That's where the money is.
Why do you break into QNAPs? That's where the data is.
That's where the data is.
So this particular one, remote threat actors can exploit a SQL injection vulnerability. Wow, we're talking about SQL injection again.
Bobby Table strikes again.
Right? And I'll tell you, in the last 3 weeks, I want to say every pen test we've been on has had some form of SQL injection. So it's
been our theme this month.
Yeah, it has been our theme.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So needless to say, SQL injection gives them access to the box, gives them remote code execution, and you should patch it. This is a 9.8 on that CVSS score of 10. So this one.
All right. So if you have a QNAP device, you want to check out this article in Patch.
I mean, 9.8. It's not 10. It could be worse.
Yeah. What gives it that minus 0.2 points?
If everyone in the world's already been hacked, it's a 10.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. If it was put in by the vendor, it's a 10.
Jeez.
So needless to say, if you take a look at some statistics, what's interesting is these types of devices are designed for home users to be able to put them on the internet too. So it's not uncommon, because a lot of people might say, oh, well, whatever, I have it at a corporate site, it's behind a firewall. But it's not uncommon for a home user to actually have a QNAP or a Synology or whatnot and be able to get to that website, get to the disk station. I believe they're aggregated. There's probably about 15,000, I think, showed on set online right now. So there's a fair number of these boxes.
Wow. So much to hack, so little time.
Mm-hmm. Woohoo! It's awesome.
And I think, speaking of time, I think we're out of it.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let's go through these next two stories anyway. We'll gloss over them. But let's talk about the one from Dark Reading. DPRK using unpatched Zimbra devices to spy on researchers. What's Zimbra?
It's a massive collaboration suite. There's Zimbra Connect, which is formerly Zimbra Talk. It's a chat program like Slack. Zimbra Docs is like OneNote on steroids type thing. Zimbra Drive is like OneDrive. So it's a collaboration suite. Yeah.
All right. So what happened?
A recent round of compromises exploited an unpatched Zimbra device was an effort sponsored by North Korean government and intended to steal intelligence from a collection of public and private medical again, and emergency sector researchers. Yeah, this is coming back to the Lazarus Group, which is odd because the Lazarus Group is usually about stealing crypto. But the researchers named this campaign "No Pineapple" after an error message generated by the malware during the investigation. The threat actors quietly exfiltrated about 100 gig worth of data without waging a disruptive cyber operation and deploying information. So that's interesting. We've seen Zimbra before with Zimbra Mail. Do you remember that? If I remember correctly, the Zimbra Mail hack was really cool because it was an attack against. You would send an email with a virus attached that did zip slipping. So the moment the Zimbra Mail server tried to extract the virus to see if it was actually a virus out of a zip, then the zip slipping attack would happen, and it would extract the file into another location that the Zimbra Mail server wasn't expecting.
That happened at the Super Bowl once, didn't it?
Zip slipping.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something else. Never mind.
Fair enough. It's before your time, kids.
All these things remind me of how biology works. How some of these animals and microbes and things protect themselves with poisons or little schemes to stay alive.
Oh, yeah. Same type of thing.
Yeah, same type of thing. All right. We don't want to spend too much time on that, but the last story we have is from Reddit. And Reddit posted this post. We had a security incident. Here's what we know. Based on our investigation so far, Reddit user passwords and accounts are safe, but on Sunday night, Reddit systems were hacked as a result of sophisticated and highly targeted phishing attacks, or a phishing attack. They gained access to some internal documents, code, and some internal business systems. Reddit is being proactive about saying, yes, we were hacked on February 5th, but everything is safe so far.
So I really like this post because first off, Reddit came out immediately and was like, hey, listen, this is what we know. This is what's happening. We're still doing research, but we want to let you guys know, which is awesome. Number two, if you read through their post, they say soon after that person was phished.
Yeah.
That person didn't go, shoot, you know what? I'm just going to log off and I'm going to walk away quietly. I really hope nobody finds out. That person immediately went to security staff and said, I was phished. I just clicked on something. We need to shut it down. And their account was removed almost immediately.
But we still don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like the LastPass started this way, right?
Right. But it's interesting in that I like this culture. The culture of openness with Reddit and you're right, with LastPass they seemed pretty open, but then we found there were a lot more details they weren't revealing, but it seems like that's a different culture. But I like the people culture here where it's like, listen, this person wasn't afraid to get fired. This person was like, listen, I know that I clicked on something. Phishing, listen, every time we do a phishing campaign, somebody clicks on something. It's going to happen, right? It's not the person's fault. Phishing is getting very, very sophisticated. But having the culture of, we're not going to fire them. We're not going to berate them. They're going to come to security so that they can actually shut down those accounts and mitigate these attacks quicker.
It has to be a safe space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
Agreed.
Very
100%.
good. All right. So be like Reddit.
But don't get hacked.
But don't get hacked. Yeah.
Not that part. The other part.
All right. We know we're running out of time now. We have to go. Patrick has to go, and we'll call it a show, and we'll see you next week. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Safe
Appreciate
travels.
You guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right.